Yep, I'm playing this for the first time the same year it turns 20. God, at the rate I'm going, I'll be reviewing Tales of Monkey Island by the time I collect my pension. The fact is that I like doing this video series because it gives me an excuse to go back and catch up on the games that I missed when they first came out. Being Button Nipper, I was limited to what my pocket money could afford me, so I found myself delving through demo discs pilfered from friends and from my parents' workplaces most of the time. So it's great to have an excuse to go back and play these. By luck of the draw, most of the point-and-click games I did play were by LucasArts. Now, I know I keep banging on about LucasArts, but they were the company for this back in the day. Not only churning out title after title, but classic after classic. The biggest competitor was probably Sierra, and whilst I did prefer the family-friendly fare of LucasArts, I can see how Sierra managed to keep up. They weren't afraid of going in a very different, sometimes adult direction. From the cartoonish gore of Space Quest to the comedic smuttiness of Leisure at Larry, all the way up to today's subject, Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers. I need to work on my cosplay. In IkiFoo, you play 10 days in the life of struggling fiction writer, failing bookshop proprietor, rampant coffee inhaler and serial charm dispenser, Gabriel Knight. He seemingly wanders around his hometown of New Orleans, seeking a cure for his terminal writer's block and recurring nightmares. He's aided by his employee, Grace. I say employee, it's implied he can't actually afford to pay her lately. And his childhood friend, Mosley, whose position as a police officer affords Gabriel a frankly unreasonable level of access to police files. The story itself opens in the midst of the voodoo murders, as the media dubs them, due to the ritualistic appearance of the crime scenes. Rather than a series of lives cruelly cut short by twisted fanatics, Gabriel views this as material for his next book and starts investigating. Cue mystery, intrigue, deception, street performance, and shameless flirting.
Did I ever tell you that you're actually quite attractive?
Be still, my heart.
Okay, as much as I hate to blaspheme against His Holiness Tim Curry, I could not stand Gabriel Knight's voice at first. The southern drawl sounded forced. Sometimes it sounded like he was voicing a parody. And I'm not talking about when they had him speaking German. That's an English actor playing an American southerner trying to pronounce German. I mean, that is damn tough to do.
Drei Drachen. Drei Drachen kriechen in meinen Schlaf.
The narrator annoyed me too, but Gabriel's voice grew on me in a way that hers never did.
Gabriel selects a volume of German poetry that he always found strangely compelling.
Fortunately, you can turn her voice off, which I only realised after I'd completed the game. The actual character of Gabriel Knight isn't that likeable either. His floundering business and constant nightmares cause him to neglect fairly major aspects of his life, which he apparently makes up for by flirting with anything in possession of a pulse and tits.
I've been in your thoughts too. I can see it in your eyes.
But the more you play, the more you see some good old southern politeness shine through. Especially in the way he interacts with his grandmother, listening to her stories, giving her hugs, saying how pretty she is. Wait, what?
You know, you get prettier every time I see you.
You.
Is that a thing? Do people do that? Anyway, Gabriel does something else I rarely see in video games. If you go to leave when you've been talking to someone, he'll say goodbye.
I'll let you get back to it.
Not just, lol, done talking now. He ends the conversation properly, like you would in real life. Any other game he'd just wander off without a word. Okay, I know it's a weird thing to notice, but it's just nice is all. Playing this did help me figure out why I didn't play so many Sierra games back in the day. Up until they discovered FMV, they loved to show you a big old list of verbs. Granted, it took a damn long while for the rest of point-and-click developers to move away from this too, but Sierra seemed to stick with it longer than most. Still, it was practically a genre staple by then, so it didn't really bother me. What did bother me was the frankly stupid choice of verbs this game gives you. You get walk, look, take, open, use, push, talk, and, another talk? It's such a clumsy selection, and I'm pretty sure I only used some of those verbs once in the entire game. What I'm saying is they could have merged a couple of them together and lost nothing. But there's something that bothered me even more than that. They don't have any keyboard shortcuts for these verbs. For those of you who haven't seen a certain blog post on my website, I love keyboards. You give me keyboard shortcuts, I will use them. You give me a game that I can play entirely with the keyboard, I am the happiest man-child you will ever see. I even buy my keyboards based on the noise they make. Yes, I am weird, I'm quite aware of that. I don't want to have to right-click through the entire list of verbs or scan a list to try and remember which top verb is which because they look the damn same at a glance. As I said before, the verbs list is a product of its time, although some modern games seem to think it's worth a comeback. But if Monkey Island could manage keyboard shortcuts 2 years prior to this, there was no excuse. Okay, enough of that. Now I'll gracefully segue into talking about the game's good points. Opening up new locations to visit is a joy. If not for the sense of achievement, then for the lovely wee jingle you get when you make progress. Sure, you're trudging back and forth between all these places, but the map makes it quick and easy, and I found the charm was in going to these new places, meeting new characters, and learning new conversation topics to ask other people about. The onus is on you to take these new pieces of information and link them back to what you know, so you can figure out what to do next. You feel really smart for connecting the dots, and it feels much more like real detective work than just moving between a series of spotlit plot markers. This is helped by another feature I rarely see. Gabriel has a tape recorder that automatically records conversations and lets you replay the highlights later. I liked this feature. It makes sense for the character to have it, they point it out in the opening scenes, and it saves you from backtracking to have people remind you of what they've told you. That said, you're kind of forced to use it when asking someone the same question twice might get you a reaction like this.
What was that translation for Caprice encore again?
I'm not in the habit of repeating myself, Mr. Knight.
But I see that as a nod to realism instead. I mean, I do tech support for my parents. I know how being asked the same question again and again nibbles away at your soul. What will keep you going through this game is a group of well fleshed out characters who play out an intriguing plot combining murder mystery with voodoo history. I feel like the Kojima method is also in full effect here. The game offers you tons of information about the history of voodoo practices and culture, as well as about New Orleans itself. Mind you, I'm god-awful at geography, so I tend to only really know about American cities that have been hit by some kind of disaster, meaning that all this info could be complete horseshit and I'd have no idea. That and I need to buy an atlas. But even if half of it was false, that would still be enough to hold my interest through to the end. And that's why I don't think it's a shame I didn't play this back in the day. I was about 6 or 7 years old. This would have gone straight over my head, and my parents would have started asking some very serious questions. It was the step towards maturity that adventure games and computer games in general needed, telling a mature story without devolving into gratuitous gore or blatant porn. Gabriel Knight is showing its age now with its interface and the way it restricts your progress, but it sticks to the genre's true strength, storytelling, and that's why it's worth a look if you've got a bit of patience.